Jayce Broda. I studied theater, classical theater and musical theater. I'm in Richmond Hill, Ontario, lived there for a number of years, but I'm originally from a little town called New Hamburg, Ontario. It's part of the Waterloo region. My family has been there a very long time. Both sides of my family have been in Canada for like 300 years. They've been Catholic or Mennonite forever. My parents divorced before I was born, so I was raised by my mom alone. And she put me into Catholic school, like most people in our family went through Catholic school, and I liked church. Unlike most kids, I really liked church. I became an altar boy when I was really young. I don't know how young I was, but I think I was 7, maybe. And an altar boy, for those who don't know, an altar boy is someone who serves priest during Catholic Mass. So a mass is a church service. So there'll be prayers, there'll be sermons, there'll be singing in a Catholic church. And the priest does a lot of things. He gives communion, there's various ceremonies that he gives in Latin or English, depending. And he will have 1 or maybe 4 or 5 altar boys who serve him. So the altar boys wear a dress and gown and a cross, like little priests. And that was my first kind of introduction to being on stage, and I loved it. I loved it a lot. So I've been living like that in a Catholic school. Our school was right beside the church. So this is why I was able to serve in the Mass so often. I did 2 Masses a day, 8:10 Mass in the morning before school, and then after that was done, I'd rush to school, and then I'd do a lunch Mass at 12:10, and I'd eat lunch in the back of the church. And the club was big. The club had like 20, 25 boys in the altar boy club, and we all rotated responsibilities. So I do this day, you do the next day, etc. And then we'd also do weddings and funerals, and you get a little bit of money. And so I liked that. And I actually liked church. I actually liked it. For some reason, I gravitated towards religion at a young age. When I was, 12, my mother remarried and we moved away, and I ended up going to a public school. So I sort of left that, and I didn't feel as close to God in respects. I mean, in Catholic school, you're reading the Bible every day. And so the stories of Jesus were imbued in your daily life, and I'm glad I had that experience. But I went to public school, there was none of that. And so, and that was a really hard time for us. When your mother remarries and a strange man comes into your life, it was a very troubled time. It was hard. It was probably, up until that point, the most difficult time of my life, for sure. It wasn't a peaceful home for a long time. So I actually moved out when I was 17. Since I was a small boy, I loved to perform, singing, acting, dancing. I'd perform at people's weddings, families' weddings. We'd dance there and stuff like that. And so, when I was younger, I was told I had to, eventually grow up and get a real job. And so I thought about policing, law enforcement, becoming an architect, a whole bunch of different stuff. But in grade 8, a friend of mine was in a play. It was a play called Rock and Roll. It was like Grease. The movie Grease. It's a play very similar to that. And my friend was the lead, and so he asked me to go to rehearsal with him. And so I'd go and just kind of hang out. But then he didn't show up once. And so the director said, why don't you just go in there and read? Just fill the part until your friend comes back. So I did that. And then the director said, actually, I think I want you instead. So I did that and really liked it. So I just by chance happened to go to a high school that was called Galt Collegiate Institute in Cambridge, Ontario, not far from where I was originally born. And they had a long tradition of theater there. They actually wrote their own plays. They had made their own music. It was amazing stroke of luck to go to that school because there was a large club of people there that were very devoted to good theater. Certainly for high school, it was amazing. And so I auditioned, and I was the only grade 9 to be accepted. Very lucky, very fortunate. But that started being mentored again by the head of drama there, head of English too. And he wrote his own plays, and he really took me under his wing and guided me through those 4 years. And I wasn't the only one. There was a small group of actors that were very serious about it. And together, we actually went to George Brown Theatre School here in Toronto. It was a very good theatre school. And we auditioned together and got in together and lived together and had lots of fun. I grew up with an amazing mother. My mother was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But as a young man, I needed that sort of initiation into adulthood. And so I felt, that I was missing 3 things, a father, a mentor, direction professionally, and then direction in my own spiritual life. I knew there was a God, but I didn't know what God wanted me to do in my life. Was there a plan? What did he want from me? What was I supposed to do? And so the next 2 years was just kind of dealing with that. And so when I was 19, I decided, well, let's pray. I'll pray, but I hadn't prayed in years since I was an altar boy in Catholic Church. So after that prayer, I forgot about it and I went on with my life. And at the time, I was working at a musical called My Fair Lady. And because I was an artist at the time, and the technical director, I was just drawn to him. He was fascinating to me. He was very different from anyone else there. This was all Catholics doing My Fair Lady. And this is part of the Catholic school board that I was working for at the time. And so professional artists would come in and teach some of the younger kids and perform with them. And so I was doing that, and I was just drawn to him. And so we would have cast parties afterwards, and he would come, but he wasn't drinking, and we were all sitting at a dinner table, and the girl who played Eliza in My Fair Lady, who was the lead, she said, you have to listen to what David was the technical director, you have to listen to what David has. This is this weird thing, just listen to this. And so all the Catholics among us, we listened to David, and David started to talk about that spirituality and religion is like a tree, and that there are many different leaves and branches of that tree. But at the core is the trunk, and it's all from the same source. All the fruits and leaves and branches are all from the same source. And that's all he said. He didn't say anything else. And it just planted a seed. Wow, that's interesting. He's like deep. He's really deep. And he was together, and he was organized, and he was disciplined, and he was so good at his job. And so I just wanted to get to know him and hang out with him. And he was old enough to be my father, clearly. And so we just, started a relationship, getting to know each other better, hanging out, socializing. There was one of the actors, an adult actor, backstage, who was saying, that David guy, the technical director, I like him, tell me about him, and can you introduce me? And so I'm on the headset going, David, there's this girl back here who really likes you. And he says, well, I'm actually on a year of patience right now, so that would be not appropriate, but thank her very much. I was very flattered. Year of patience, okay, whatever that was. And so then in private later on, when I obviously knew him quite a bit better, I asked what a year of patience was. And that really began introduction to Baha'i faith and principles of Baha'i faith and teachings of Baha'i faith. And so that's basically how that started. Fortunately or unfortunately, David went away on a trip to China for the whole summer. And he left me with one book called The Dawn Breakers. And this changed everything. That book changed everything. It totally transformed my life. And it's such a powerful book that I can go back now and read that book and I know it will have a very similar spiritual impact on me. I read the stories of the 7 martyrs of Tehran. And there's a story of the Bab's maternal uncle. And he's the first one to be martyred. And then the second Babi to be brought to the stand is named Qurban Ali. And Qurban, that story changed my life. So much so I wanted to name my son Qurban, so I did. You know, in the beginning of the story, Nabil says that all these men were offered the chance to pay lip service. All you had to do was just say you're not a Babi. Go off in your life and be a Babi. Just tell us you're not a Babi. We'll accept that and you can just go on with your life. And none of them did it. And I was puzzled. Why would you make such a profound choice? And the executioner's job was to not kill all these Babis, but to scare them into submitting, to scare them into paying lip service. And so the executioner takes his sword and he winds up and he hits Qurban Ali in the back of the head with the flat of his sword. Instead of with the blade of the sword, the flat of his sword. And he knocks his head forward and the turban falls off his head and rolls on the ground. And Qurban Ali then quotes, I believe it's Hafez, I could be wrong, but he quotes one of the Persian poets and he says, as if with his last breath, happy he whom love's intoxication so hath overgrown, that scarce he knows whether at the feet of the beloved it be head or turban which he throws. I mean, it was incredible. I'd never seen anything like that. And then the executioner, in exasperation, just takes Qurban Ali's head off. And this was just the beginning. I mean, the remainder of the martyrs of Tehran vied with each other. They competed with each other to be the next one to prove with their own life who the Bab was. And I was just like, either like this Catholic boy from small town Ontario was thinking, either these people are all crazy, or there is something so important to them that they're willing to give up everything that's important to them. They're not just willing to give it up, but they're eager to give it up. I had never seen anything like this. And then I read another story that really put me over the edge. So this Babi family is being harassed by a gang of people outside the street. And they're throwing rocks and screaming and yelling at them at their house. And they had taken their boy, their teenager, their young son, and they had beheaded this Babi boy. And they brought his beloved head to their house, thrown it through the window at the mother. And the mother does something that just, I could never conceive of this happening. She picks up the head of her son, washes it, throws it back at the gang of harassers and says, I will not take back what I've sacrificed to God. I was unbelievable. I had to know what was causing these people to do these things. And so I read the whole book of the Dawn Break Loose. I would come back right here to the Baha'i Center at the time, had a bookstore that was open, and I would come in and quietly grab books and leave. And I didn't want anyone to ask me questions. And I didn't want to be the one who was part of an organized religion. And, this is why I am so thankful for the writings of our faith, because it cleared so many things up that I was very confused about, or that I thought I understood. But I think I understand Jesus much better now through the writings of the Baha'i faith than I did through years of Catholic school. One time I had come back, I remember it was November 4th of 1993. I came into this building, and Bruce Mackay was the custodian at the time. I bought a book, and he asked me, "Oh, are you a Baha'i?" I said, "Yeah, I guess I am. I must be." That's what I was thinking, but to him, I was like, "Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, I'm a Baha'i." But this is the first time I admit to myself, you can't not say you're not a Baha'i anymore. You have to admit that. And that was, I guess, about a 7-8 month process that I went through. And my life has never been the same since. And then after I graduated, I took on what was supposed to be a few months of service in Europe, teaching the faith through what was Baha'i Youth Workshop at the time. This was a group of Baha'i youth that would come together and act, sing, and dance about social issues like racism, gang violence, drug abuse, etc. And we performed over Europe, and that 3 months expanded to almost 2 years. So I went all over Europe, India, and I loved it. That was the best time of my life. And I came back, and I decided just start the same thing here in Canada. So with a few other Baha'i friends, we started the Wildfire Dance Theatre, which was a very similar model. So you bring youth together, both Baha'i and non-Baha'i, who liked performing and also cared about these pressing problems in our society, whether that was drug abuse, racism, whatever, poverty, extremes of wealth and poverty. We would create shows that would address those issues, tell stories around those problems, and then perform at high schools, universities, community centers, wherever. And so that really exploded. That started with 5 people, and by the end of 5 years, we had 2 casts of 12 to 13 people touring all around the world. Toured 19 countries over 5 years.
Watch.
This is not a test. This is an emergency. Party people, this is what I need you to do. Let's get on the dance floor.
But then I had twin boys with special needs, and our life changed quite a bit. So I left that and pursued basically a career in new media. So I create YouTube videos for a tech news site called Android Authority. I have about 3 million subscribers. We built that up from nothing to where it is now. And I was able to provide for myself and my family doing that. And now I provide those services to other businesses. So that's the short version of that. My wife is named Wansi. She's from Hong Kong, China. She was born there and grew up here. She became a Baha'i in her teens, like I did. And we met doing youth service, like I talked about, the acting and singing and dancing and stuff. We actually first met in this building 25 years ago. Yeah, and so we have twin boys, Olinga and Korban, and we have a daughter named Raven, and she's 16 and the twins are 18. When I first became Baha'i, that was difficult for my mother. I think that my mother mistakenly understood that me changing my faith was a rejection of her and how she raised me. When of course it wasn't anything like that. I think the way she raised me actually in part prepared me for the faith, because she was very careful about raising me with certain values. And those values are very consistent with the Baha'i faith. So I credit her for that, but she never saw it that way. I think she saw it as a personal rejection of her. So, and because she didn't know anything about the faith, she suspected that the Baha'i faith was a cult. Of course, it is nothing of the kind. But she was very concerned about that, so she consulted her priest and considered sending me to a deculting camp. This is a place where you send people, they've been part of a cult, and they need to be de-brainwashed. But I think over time, she started to meet Baha'is. She started to know that obviously the Baha'i faith was not a cult or anything like it. So she eventually has warmed to the idea that this is not a phase. She told me when I was 19 that this is just a phase, you'll get through it. This is 25 years later, and obviously it's not a phase. No matter your past, if your heart is searching, the answer will come to you like a breeze.